So what happens when a disaster strikes, but the official report is still weeks, maybe even months away? How do you learn from it now to prevent the next one? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to dig into the tragic explosion at the Jiapeng Biotechnology facility in Shanxi, China, and see what clues we can uncover. Okay, before we get into any of the technical details, the schematics, or the processes, I want you to focus on just one number: 8. That's how many people lost their lives. It's a gut-wrenching reminder of the very real human cost behind every single industrial accident. All right, so let's piece together the timeline here. The facility itself was founded in June of 2025. Then, on February 7th, 2026, the explosion happens. The very next day, that awful number, 8 lives lost, is confirmed. But look closely at those dates. Do you see it? The plant was less than a year old. And that one little fact, well, it's going to be absolutely central to everything we talk about today.
The basic facts of what happened are just chilling. We're talking about early on a Saturday morning. A workshop at the Jiapeng Biotechnology company is just ripped apart by this massive explosion. The whole site was out in a mountainous area, and you had smoke just pouring from the wreckage for hours and hours after the blast.
And this is the real challenge, right? The official cause is still being investigated. So if you're a safety professional, you're sitting there asking yourself, how on earth do we start learning from this when the final report, the why of it all, is still missing?
Okay, so let's put things into 2 buckets, what we know and what we don't. In the no bucket, we've got the confirmed fatalities. We know the facility was brand spanking new, and we know a company rep has been detained. But in the don't know bucket is the biggest piece of the puzzle, the specific, technical reason for the explosion. That's still a complete mystery. Which brings us right back to our big question. How do you learn anything useful? How do you prevent this from happening again when you don't have that final report? Well, the answer is, you've got to put on your detective hat. You have to follow the clues that are right there in front of you. So, let's do it. Let's start following those clues. And our investigation, it doesn't actually start with the explosion itself. Nope. It starts with what was happening before the blast. What were the day-to-day operations like inside those walls before it all went so terribly wrong? And you know, the first clue is actually the most basic one you can ask. What were they even making in there? You'd think that'd be a simple answer, but it's not. It turns out to be surprisingly complex, revealing what I can only describe as a cocktail of potential hazards.
I mean, just look at this. Look at the sheer variety of risk they packed under one roof. On one hand, you've got coal materials, which means combustible dust. Then you've got paint manufacturing, which brings in flammable chemical solvents. And to top it all off, biofeed production, which has its own unique risk of a vessel overpressurizing from fermentation. Seriously, any one of these is a major hazard. Putting all 3 together, that's a recipe for a perfect storm. Let's just zero in on 2 of these for a second. Combustible dust. It's not just something that can catch fire. No, when fine particles of something like coal are hanging in the air in a closed space, it can literally explode. The trigger could be something as small as a spark from static electricity. Then you've got the flammable vapors from the paint solvents. They can just silently fill up a room, waiting for a single ignition source. Both are basically invisible, silent threats just waiting to happen. And this brings us right back to that fact we mentioned earlier. The one that might be the single most important clue of all, how new this facility was. This isn't just a random detail. It really makes you ask the question, why is new so incredibly dangerous in a place like this? Think about it. When a plant is brand new, that switch from construction to full-blown operation, that is a period of maximum vulnerability. You might have gaps in your safety systems you haven't found yet. Your operators, their training might be great on paper, but it's not battle-tested, you know? They haven't seen everything that can go wrong in the real world. And maybe most importantly, the safety procedures are still just words on a page. They haven't become second nature, a part of the culture. Okay, so we've unpacked some of the potential causes. Now it's time to make a really important shift in our thinking. Let's move away from just looking at what happened and start talking about prevention. The big question, how could something like this have been stopped in its tracks? Because here's the bottom line. Preventing a disaster isn't magic. It's not about luck. It's a process. It requires super rigorous, systematic ways of working that are designed to find and shut down hazards long before they have a chance to hurt anyone. So your first line of defense is something called a process hazard analysis, or PHA.
The best way to think of it is like a pre-mortem. You get all the smart people in a room, engineers, operators, safety pros, and you basically try to break the system on paper. You ask all the what if questions. What if this valve gets stuck? What if the power goes out right at this critical step? It's a way to find all the hidden weak spots and build in protections before you even start building the real thing. Then, just before you're about to go live, you do what's called a pre-startup safety review, a PSSR. And listen, this is not just ticking boxes on a form. This is boots on the ground. It means literally walking the plant, checking with your own eyes that safety devices are installed right. It means pushing the button to test the alarms. And it means making operators show you, not just tell you, that they know the emergency procedures. It's the absolute final gatekeeper standing between a safe startup and a potential disaster. So really, it all boils down to a pretty clear 4-step blueprint for safety. Step 1. Analyze every single hazard you can possibly think of. Step 2. Verify you're ready to go with that final hands-on check. Step 3. Be ruthless about hazardous zoning. Keep things that can spark far, far away from things that can burn. And Step 4? Well, Step 4 never ends. You train your people and you audit your systems over and over and over again, relentlessly. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one idea. It's not just about checklists and procedures. It's about culture. It's about an unyielding adherence to safety standards. That means safety isn't something you do when you have time. It's not up for debate. It's the rock-solid foundation that everything, absolutely everything, is built on. So, we've followed the clues. We've talked about the blueprint for prevention. What's the one big, ultimate takeaway here? What's the most critical lesson we can learn from this awful tragedy in Shanxi? Here it is, right here. This visualizes what I'd call the danger zone. The risk level for a brand new facility in its first year is just off the charts compared to an established plant where everything is routine and the systems have proven themselves. That first year, that initial period, that's when you are at your most vulnerable, and that's where you need the most intense focus. And the lesson here is simple, and it's universal. The highest risk is when you're new. It doesn't matter if you're starting up a massive new plant, rolling out a new process, or even just bringing a new team member on board. That beginning phase is always the period of greatest vulnerability. And it's when your vigilance has to be at 110%. So, I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. This idea, it's not just for giant chemical plants. Think about your own world, your own work. What new risks exist for you right now? What new projects, new systems, new teams are you dealing with? And are you really giving them the extra attention and scrutiny that they absolutely demand?